In issue 3, probably the very first panel, where the first panel in Watchmen number 3 is an intensely tight close-up of a radiation warning, the yellow and black radiation symbol. We're so close to it that all you can see are 3 black shapes, or 4 black shapes upon a yellow field. The dialogue coming from off-panel is the dialogue of the news vendor who's saying, I think we ought to nuke Russia and let God sort it out. There's also a caption which relates to the pirate comic that the young boy in the street is reading, which talks about, I saw that black ship against the yellow Indies sky and knew again the smell of powder and men's brains and war. This apocalyptic little caption of horror and war and despair. And the actual panel that you're looking at, the black and yellow shapes, it does look sort of like the sails of a black ship coming towards you against a yellow sky. And I thought, this is great. We're linking this image of this black, awful hell ship with the approaching Armageddon. We're getting this resonance from the insensitivity of what the news vendor is saying with this very impassioned, poetic statement that's in the caption. There are all these little connections happening. There are all these things bouncing off of each other in this one very simple panel. And I think, yeah, that panel was when the light bulb came on above my head. That's when I thought, yeah, we could take this an awful lot further.
Of the 12 issues, which one is your favorite?
I very much like the Dr. Manhattan issue number 4. I like the structure of that. I like the way in which we played with a character who does not perceive time the same way that we do. We have a character who's post-Einsteinian, who seems to accept that all time is happening at once, past, present and future. And to him, the past is still there, and the future is there right now. And we tried to adapt that into comic storytelling to show his worldview. And there's something quite magical that happens in that issue. These little connections, it's quite heartbreaking at times. I was very pleased with that. These things happen by accident. I can't claim to have planned them. But you get these happy accidents where some little scene will be, for no apparent reason, very, very touching. So yeah, I think that was probably all around my favourite issue. Although, to counterbalance that, there is the Rorschach issue, The Abyss Also Gazes, in which I think in terms of Watchmen, that issue is where we actually go for the heart of darkness. We go to the very centre of this black, depressing sort of pre-nuclear worldview. That that had the ring of honesty about it. It was quite interesting when we were sending off the issues to DC. The first 3 or 4 that we sent off, as soon as they got the package, I'd get ecstatic phone calls from the editors and everybody concerned, saying, oh, this latest issue, it's so good, it's so wonderful, we're really pleased with it. I sent off number 5, which was or number 6, which was the Rorschach issue, and there was just dead silence. I thought, oh, maybe they didn't like it, you know, but it turned out it was just that it was so horrifying and black that they were all stunned speechless. They did quite like it, but I gather that they just passed it round and everyone just stared at each other with, you know, sort of bleak and haunted eyes and never said a word, you know, which is about the best compliment that I could have received for it. So, yeah, those 2 issues, those are the ones that are my favourites.
I like the fact that you included a number of fairly recognizable characters, Nixon, Kissinger, Robert Redford. You didn't set Watchmen in a completely fabricated world like Gotham City.
No, we wanted to deal with recent events in real America. We wanted to deal with Vietnam, which is a thing, if I might be so bold as to say that I don't think America has quite dealt with itself yet. I mean, we posited a Vietnam where America won because Dr. Manhattan won the war for them. He just made himself 60 feet high and strode through the paddy fields and trampled on the Viet Cong, which is basically what happened. So Vietnam, in our book, was a victory for the USA. So that again changes the complexion of things. Although I wouldn't say that it is a political book. It is a book that by necessity includes a rather skewed and different view of recent American politics.
It was very much an 80s story born out of that miasma of anxiety and unease that, as I remember, it was hanging over all of us then. The world seemed significantly closer to nuclear war. I think that's an illusion. I don't think we're any less danger of nuclear war at the moment. But back then, it seemed very, very present all the time, with sort of half-wits like Ronald Reagan saying the bombing starts in 10 minutes, you know. That didn't seem that funny to me, I must admit. Consequently, Watchmen was an attempt to come to terms with that unease. I mean, it drew some made some political points about power and the abuses of power. But I think my main intention was just to try and capture as accurately as possible the fear that I was feeling myself. I was feeling afraid for my children, for my family, for my friends, for myself, for my world. And articulating that was very difficult. I had to put myself through a bad couple of months to get close enough to that feeling, because it's so easy to hide away from it. It's such a terrible thing to think that the whole world could be gone in 4 minutes. I mean, I believe that that's the average. A missile launched from a submarine, it would be here in 6 minutes. No warning. The truth of our existence is that the missiles could be in the air now. And that has been the truth of our existence since I was born. How do you live with that? How do you live with that constant threat of annihilation? That was what Watchmen was trying to answer, and it meant me getting closer to those thoughts and those feelings, which I frankly tried to suppress most of the time. But for those months, I had to get very close to them and face them. I came away feeling a lot better. I came away feeling that I'd looked at it, that I'd got it in proportion, that I wasn't scared anymore.
It's almost 6 years later. What do you see as the legacy of Watchmen?
I think that I'd have to echo what David Bowie said about his influence. You know, this is the face that launched 1,000 pretensions. At the time, I hoped that Watchmen might show up a lot of the essential silliness and redundancy of the superhero genre. It wasn't meant as a revitalisation of the superhero. It was meant as a tombstone for the superhero, at least in my terms. I couldn't see any point in doing superheroes, from my point of view, after Watchmen. Unfortunately, everybody else could. And there have been an awful lot of bad Watchmen clones. Or not just specifically Watchmen clones, but this would extend to Dark Knight as well. People who were looking at those faintly grim and postmodern superhero comics of the mid-80s, and instead of moving on from there, have just recycled them again and again and again for the last 6 years. It's almost like, you know, postmodernism by numbers. You make a few references to William Burroughs, you make a few references to some currently popular band like R.E.M. that will impress your young readers with how hip you are. You throw in some garbled sort of sub-psychedelic philosophy. And you've got a modern comic. Doesn't matter whether it has any substance, doesn't matter whether it has any direction, but it hits enough of the right button so that people will recognise this as something modern and experimental and daring. And of course it is not in the least bit experimental or daring. To me, the people who have taken the chances are not in the mainstream.
No.
The people who've taken the chances are the people like Chester Brown, the Hernandez brothers, Peter Bagg, Julie Doucette, all of those people. They are not getting big royalties for this summer's giant Batman crossover. But they are doing the work that is dangerous and radical and innovative. They're the ones who deserve the credit.
These are the comics that Alan Moore recommended. Peter Bagg's Hate, Yummy Fur from Toronto-based Chester Brown, the Hernandez brothers' Love and Rockets, and Dirty Plot from Montreal's Julie Doucette. All must-have double-bag items. Who will watch The Watchmen? Well, the comic has been optioned as a Hollywood movie, so maybe we'll all get to watch it. Batman screenwriter Sam Hamm wrote a script for Terry Gilliam in '88. Now I hear Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, who adapted the Rocketeer comic to the screen, are working on a new script. As for the cast, for Dr. Manhattan, they're thinking about Arnold. I'd cast Sting. For Dan Dryberg, the new Night Owl, Dan Aykroyd or John Lithgow. Silk Spectre, Demi Moore. Rorschach, Christopher Walken or Willem Dafoe. The comedian, Nick Nolte. Or Dabney Coleman if he gets Linda Hamilton's biceps. And Adrian Veidt, the handsome genius who watches hundreds of TVs, well, photo and resume upon request.
Bruce, I'll be the same. Dirty Harry, make my day. Terminator, hit the north. Alan Moore knows the score. Risk, yeah! Can you dig it?
Who watches The Watchmen? I'm watching. I'm always watching. Last week on Second Nature, meteorologists predict that within 2 years, ultraviolet light will scorch the Earth. Carbon dioxide will poison the atmosphere over the next 5 years, followed by 3 years of acid rain. And then, warm, pleasant, and sunny for the new millennium.
Hi, I'm Matsu Anderson.